calendar for Monday, October 26th. Let the record reflect that we have all three commissioners present. And the first topic of the day is a continuation of the conversation we were having with our expert consultants with regard to the blueprint and our progress and stuff. So Maggie, are you on?
I'm here. Yes, Commissioner French.
Go ahead and introduce our guest.
Great. Thanks again for having us back. We're joined by Judge Murphy and Dutch Wetzel, and Jim McDevitt is also on the line. They were the original authors of the Blueprint for Reform that has really informed a lot of the work we've done since 2013, and have been working on a status report or an update on our progress under those reforms and other initiatives outside of the original report at the Board of County Commissioners' direction. And they're here today to continue updating you all on their findings. We made it through about the first third or half of the report last week, and so I'll turn it over to the authors and let them pick up from here. Ron, I'm not sure that we'll be needing the PowerPoint today, but you're welcome to leave it up if it's useful as a reference.
All right, just to refresh your recollection on what our project has been about, we were charged with exploring objectives including elimination of duplicate services and/or processes that will more quickly service citizens while reducing overhead costs. We were charged with looking into increasing investment for diversion programs, that is alternatives to incarceration that result in reduced jail time, and more quickly return individuals to being productive members of society while reducing the system costs. We sought to achieve operational efficiencies that may allow for new programs utilizing operational savings, to allow for construction of capital facilities that fit regional businesses, service needs that are greatly reduced cost, and by eliminating duplicate facilities, and to establish a precedent for multi-jurisdictional cooperative models that can be replicated in other lines of business. Last week we went through, as was pointed out by Maggie Yates, the first half of the report and its report cards that are included at the end of each section. We decided that the report itself was helpful to others in meeting the objectives that we talked about, but at the same time, it was important to be critical, and I don't mean that in a negative sense necessarily, of efforts to meet the recommendations that were established by the Criminal Justice Commission. As you may remember, we talked to over 400 people. We had thousands of hours of discussions with people, public hearings, and research into the issues that were before us. We established the Blueprint for Reform. It was criticized in its creation by a large number of agencies, including the county commissioners, the city council, and citizens. And we were able to come out with a process on December 31st, 2013, and included in the project was the report cards for people telling how they have done in meeting the objectives and recommendations of the project. Dutch, anything you want to add to that? You're muted.
Muted, Judge. Judge, you need to unmute yourself.
Pardon?
I'm talking to Judge Wetzel.
Oh,
Dutch.
thanks.
Dutch.
There you go.
Yeah, it's Dutch. I'm not a judge, thank God.
I'm sorry. You missed it by one letter. Come on.
No, No, I would just underline the importance of the report cards and our suggestion and that all agencies provide periodic reports based on data of the outcomes that they have achieved.
Jim, any comments?
No, that's about it. I think part of the whole thing was because there's so much of the county's budget, over 70% goes into the criminal, into the justice system, and a like amount, or not the same percentage, a significant amount from the city. We felt that transparency in this part of the world was extremely important. And there's a lot of the work that a lot of the agencies do, the judges included, that are not transparent to the public. And we felt that report cards in that regard were very, very important.
Okay, having gone through a number of the report cards last week, I'd like to just kind of highlight what remains of our report cards moving forward. Jim articulated the report cards as they related to the police, the sheriff, and other organizations dealing with that. I'd like to go to indigent defense. We had suggested that indigent defense offices work with detention services to set up a video conferencing capability. The plans on that are promising for moving forward and should be implemented with all due haste. There are large screen televisions in the courts now. They are used in the municipal court, the district court, and the superior courts, and they are moving forward to do that. We also suggested that there be space provided for regular face-to-face meetings between lawyers and their clients. And it's so overburdened that it's a difficult matter for lawyers to get together face-to-face with their clients. There are needs for papers to be signed, and it becomes difficult for an in-person opportunity. Also, it takes a while to get up to the jail when attorneys need to see their attorneys, and attorneys need to see their clients, and it was suggested that improvement be made on that process so that we don't have a whole lot of public defenders hanging around the lobby waiting to get into the jail to see their clients. It also provides better privacy between the attorney and the client. That has been improved to some extent, but it's those face-to-face meetings still need to be improved. We need to move forward on that recommendation. One of the major issues that we discussed was the creation of a community correction center. It's a great idea, but there's been very little progress to date in it, in spite of support from a broad cross-section of leadership and community members. There appears to be too much outside interference in the creation of such a facility. It must be designed correctly. It must be staffed with a good mix of security and safety, as well as appropriate programs designed to reduce recidivism. We all went down to Hillsboro, Oregon, and went through the community correction center that they have in Hillsboro. And it's an interesting concept. People originally are taken over to the community correction center are classified based on the level of danger that they pose to the community and other issues, and then the decision is made as to whether to keep them in the community correction center or put them in the jail. if they stay in the community corrections facility, they are offered services for alcoholism, for drug problems, for domestic violence issues, for mental health problems. And I realize we now have a mental health center, and that's a great step forward, but that needs to be expanded to make a community correction center that allows for the opportunity for people to be seen pre-jailing, and cuts down in the number of people that are in the jail and expands the use of services. Slight progress, as I say, has been made in light of intake and releasing efforts, but there's still a lot of work to do on that. We talked about developing alternative sentencing programs and expand electronic home monitoring at all courts. Again, this is an issue that has really too much outside interference standing in the way of electronic home monitoring and work crew, at least on the county side. Some actions on this initiative have been taken, but detention services have limited authority regarding referrals to electronic home monitoring, as well as work crew and alternative sentencing programs, which is a judicial function. We talked about ensuring greater coordination of transportation and scheduling. Transportation remains a big problem. That is getting people from the jail to the courts. The use of television has helped a lot, but at the same time, there are a lot of inmates who have to be delivered to the jail. There's really been no action on this initiative. It's still a problem, but it's out of the hands of detention services. No changes or new efforts have been instituted. The jail continues to use the objective jail classification. We recommend that the jail applies a behavioral health screening at booking or classification to make sure that individuals who have behavioral health issues are swiftly identified and treated. It's worth noting that detention services has made significant changes in response to COVID. It's really kind of changed the culture over there. It's created a quarantine process for individuals booked into jail. We applaud those efforts and the staff's success at working on it. Overall, not a lot of success has been made. The jail should take urgent steps to ensure that behavioral health population is properly and timely identified at the time of booking. Probation services, we had suggested an interlocal agreement on consolidation of those. There still exists a big problem in disparity in pay and conditions due to union membership. And there's been no action taken on this initiative, really. We had found that both the city and the county thought that consolidation was possible, but not probable under the present conditions, and it looks like they were right. We talked about application use of a standardized risk and needs assessment. The city took action on this initiative, and the county is catching up, and we found that to be an important factor in having evidence-based decisions being made. So we're happy to see that improvement being made. We talked about probation caseloads being reduced to workable numbers, and there's been a lot of improvement in that area. There is a constant attempt being made by both the city and the county to reduce caseloads to workable numbers and determine appropriate levels of supervision. A number of models have been sought, examined, and some implemented and some not. There doesn't appear to be a real program to work out situation where a defendant has cases and both municipal and district court, and is being supervised by both city and county probation services. It's been explained to us that there are limited numbers of cases that are cross-pollinated like this, that have both city and county cases on the same individual. I think there has been a lot of improvement in this area, and people seem to be working toward resolution of those limited cases in which there is that duplication. So Jim or Dutch, you have anything else?
Well, Judge Murphy, Jim McDevitt, I was the one that interviewed both the city and the county probation services. One of the things we looked at here was to look at these practices from a business standpoint or a cost saving standpoint. And I want to highlight the first one that Judge Murphy talked about in probation services. And that is there is an absolute duplication of effort between city probation services and county probation services. And I talked to both. They were both individuals who were very frank with me. And as the judge said, consolidation was possible but not likely for a number of reasons. A huge pay disparity. The frustration was that the county trained the probation service officers and then loses the POs to the city because of a huge pay disparity. The other was union resistance. And the third, and probably the most important, was the resistance by the judges who didn't want to lose control of probation services. The 8 district court judges and the 3 municipal court judges who wanted to maintain control of probation services. In my view, looking at this from an economic standpoint, it's flat out duplication of effort. It may not be a huge number in the grand scheme of things, but remember, when we approached this, we looked at the solution was 1,000 small sanities, and this is one of them. Dutch, did you have a comment on?
Yes, I would just highlight 2 things that Judge Murphy mentioned. Number one is the jail visiting by the lawyers. It seems like such a simple issue, but it's a very big issue, and we've all agreed that significant savings could be realized if that were improved. For instance, a public defender might need a signature or for an inmate, or might have to just simply give him an update on his case. So he leaves his office, he walks over to the jail, he waits until he's assigned a jail visiting booth. He goes through the security gate and his briefcase is examined. He goes up to the jail after waiting for the elevator. He takes his 1 or 2 minute meeting with the client. He waits again for the elevator to come back down, and he walks back to his office. That could well take about an hour. And other jurisdictions have found savings and efficiencies by setting up Skype and email systems to communicate with those simple meetings. The other issue is the Community Correction Center in Hillsborough. There's another important aspect that I would highlight, and that's that one function of that system is to guide releasees or upcoming releasees by getting them a bus ticket, getting them assistance with a job, getting them lining up a place to stay, making sure they have clothes. And we learned in our 2013 research that the biggest predictors of recidivism really isn't drug and alcohol abuse. It's the lack of food, clothing, and shelter. And so that would be one of the functions of the community corrections system. And it is simply an effort to erase the predictable desperation of a recent releasee who doesn't have food, clothing, or shelter.
Thank you. I think that is one of the two greatest needs that we have. The first is the possibility of restructuring the Law and Justice, or I'm sorry, the Regional Justice Commission. It was originally established as a multi-faceted group that met on a regular basis and took action on recommendations that were being made. The recommended Regional Justice Commission itself was never established, and the proposed model was politically unrealistic since a 5-member council does not have the authority to dictate policy for other elected officials who may or may not be serving on the Regional Justice Commission. The city and the county established the Office of Law and Justice, finding that the justice administrator and staff assistant was necessary to manage this sort of a thing.
Hey, I'm just walking in my house. Can I call you back in a couple of minutes? Yep, give me a call. Will that work? Yep, perfect. Okay, thanks.
What's that?
Hey, Cindy, you're on. You need to put it on.
Yeah, Cindy.
Okay, we had recommended establishing the Office of Law and Justice Coordinating Committee as a result of the problems that existed with the larger group that was established, which included people from all walks of life, community members, people within the criminal justice system, and in an act of good graces, they were able to get the money from the MacArthur Foundation, and they administered that fund. They did a lot of good things, but the Regional Law and Justice Council itself has become a little bit too unwieldy. They had local jurisdictions which established and then disbanded a slew of committees, task forces, and working groups over the past several years in order to manage and move the project forward. Such committees, some have been productive. Other cases, they have thwarted centralized communication, planning, and public transparency. So we recommend shifting or replacing the Law and Justice Council with a Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee as endorsed by the National Institute of Corrections. Since the Law and Justice Council failed to grow into an agile and effective working group that's really necessary to catalyze change. The committee should therefore be replaced by a Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. The other issue, again, is the establishment of the Community Correction Center. We feel that's vital to reducing jail population and to basing decisions on evidence-based information that's made available to the judges, to intake officers, to the jail, to the prosecutor and the public defender. And we've seen it in action, and it's much preferable to what we have here. So that's the bulk of our report on recommendations and observations that we've made after the blueprint came out in 2013. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, I've got an observation for you, Judge. You know, when we started down this road with the SRLJC, the early leadership of that effort morphed the MacArthur grant process in with the Law and Justice Council. So it ended up becoming an amalgamation of both those efforts, and really, in my mind, clouded the original intent of the Law and Justice Council. And so the idea of going to a Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee, have you guys given any thought to what the makeup of that might look like? who would we invite to the table for that kind of a committee? And then how would we wind down the Law and Justice Council, or would we just morph it into this other entity?
Well, I think Maggie could help us. Maggie, you still on?
Yes, Judge, I'm here.
You have any comments on Commissioner French's suggestion?
I would consult the materials put out by the NIC to determine the best sort of model for a law and justice coordinating committee. There are examples across the country that we can look toward for some direction. In terms of the SRLJC, I'm not sure sort of what the future of that would look like, if we would continue to operate that as an advisory council, or if you would want to wind it down and shift operations and conversations under the LJCC.
Commissioner, there have been suggestions that the financing portion be taken out of the hands of the commission and be made a separate committee, thus obviating the problems that you've just suggested in having everything in one site. So I think that's something that could be considered, separating out the financial from the policy decisions that are addressed by the council itself.
Okay.
Anything else? Any comments from Jim or Phil?
But if I can, Jim McDevitt, a couple of observations, a couple of real high points that really struck out, stood out for me. One was the effort of community outreach by law enforcement, by both Spokane Police Department and the Sheriff's Office, on community outreach programs like SCOPE and COPS, YPI, PAL, a lot of those. I mean, tremendous community outreach. And that's very, very important in this day and age where law enforcement seems to be under fire from some parts of the world. The other was the honesty that we had from the people that we talked to. I think we've developed, the three of us have developed a degree of credibility, and we had people who really were very honest with us from the standpoint of the good, the bad, and the ugly, and that was very, very refreshing. From the standpoint of the makeup of a council, as Commissioner French asked, you know, you could look at for example, something like the composition of the airport board, which I know Commissioner French and myself are very familiar with, where you have a representative from the city council, a representative from the county, you have other entities that are involved, but it's leaner and much more effective. The SLRJC or whatever now, I think one of the folks we interviewed, and he knows who he is, described it as the bucket of everyone's dreams that continued to get sidetracked and sort of all, as I would say, as an aviator, all velocity and no vector. Lots and lots of energy, but very, very little being accomplished, to the frustration of the members as well. Dutch?
Well, excuse me. We had originally recommended something along the lines of a czar who would have actual power and the ability to be nimble to address issues that seem to come up in criminal justice every day. And that wasn't achieved. I'm not sure that a czar can actually be achieved, but I would hope that any governing body have real authority and the real ability to be nimble to respond quickly.
I think you get more objectivity with a leader of that nature. As we formed the Law and Justice Council, we talked about the leadership of the council, and the commissioners took the position that that was a commissioner function. And from the outset, the commissioners have been in charge of the administration of the Law and Justice Council. Again, I would suggest, as we did at the when we wrote the blueprint, that some overarching authority be granted to a leader independent of political consideration, that they be able to take a look at proposals from the point of view of the mission statement of the blueprint and the objectives being sought by the creation of the commission that sit before you here today. Perhaps the commissioner's real function is that of administrative and fiscal responsibility, as well as input for policy issues that are affected by fiscal issues. At the same time, giving to the members of the reconstituted organization the ability to make rational and evidence-based decisions in moving forward on proposed policy. I think we all came to the conclusion that Azar was, that's probably not a good word to use, but Azar was not practical. We're dealing with elected officials as well as bureaucratic employees and the public in the present construction of the Law and Justice Council. And such a relationship probably is unrealistic, but I think there can be important changes made to the structure of a coordinating council that would make it much more effective.
Yeah, the way the Law and Justice Council is structured now, I think there's 23 elected officials that are all convinced that they have the right answer.
You're right. Well, I think Jim's statement of bucket of all dreams is quite accurate, and yeah, that's never going to work. So that's why we need to be smaller, more nimble, and not quite so many inputs. Anything else?
Anything else for our group, Josh or Mary? Well, I just want to say on behalf of the board, thank you so much for the work you've done. I mean, this is incredible work, and we take it very seriously. So we will be going through that here over the next couple of weeks and trying to figure out what we do from here. So thank you very much.
Well, thanks for giving us your time to be able to report the report cards to you and showing an interest in the project itself. And so we look forward to the outcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So next up is Gil.
Right behind Bruce.
Facilities update. So Jerry,
Yeah, we'll have the maps and everything.
okay.
Morning.
Hey.
Just sounds great.
Doing good.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, this is all just kind of like a flu bug.
All right, gentlemen, you're up.
Hey, good morning, commissioners. We're here this morning to we're here for an ask and some input on this is the family law remodel for the second floor and the courthouse restrooms. During the process of the courthouse restroom design, as part of the grant, as working through the courthouse plans, Bruce and I had actually been approached by the American Disabilities Council and for a couple of the law students that are actually working here that are actually one of them is in a wheelchair. And one of the things that we wanted to take a specific look at also while we were into this project was taking a look at not only the restrooms in the courthouse, but also the restrooms that are in the annex also. So during this relook at the project as a whole. We did come across, as you'll see in our bids that we solicited, for the actual option one for the base bid for the family law came out a little bit on the higher side than we had anticipated. Even with the buffer for the work that we're doing with the restroom, because a partial on the restroom on the second floor was kind of a rework from the original restroom that's up there. We were going to utilize the vault space that was in the old treasury area as a larger men's room on the second floor. So the cost actually came up quite a bit with the actual base bid for the two projects combined. We're looking at a funding shortfall of just a little over $500,000. And then we took for the option 2 and the option 3. The option 2 is the same for the restrooms, for the accessibility and stabilization, and then the family law remodel. Option 2, we wanted to add in out of the 4 sets of restrooms in the annex, we figured that the third floor right outside the juror's room would be a nice one to add in. But then we went ahead for option 3. We added in all the restrooms. We did the restrooms not only for the courthouse, but these are also all the restrooms on all 4 floors of the annex that would be added in, which came out to a funding shortfall of about $831,475. What we're looking here is we're just kind of soliciting advice and information of which path we would want to potentially pursue. Mine as part of the grant, I do have the funding for. I think that it was the family law remodel. I think sizing wise and what we uncovered actually brought that cost of that up quite drastically.
All that, and when we had all the testing done for hazardous materials, they found quite a bit of asbestos and stuff up there. So abating all of that cost us a bit more.
Do you have a recommendation?
So our recommendation, based on our meeting that Bruce and I had with Judge Clark and the American Disabilities Council, the group there, we would like to pursue option 3. That would really it would take all the accessibilities for all the restrooms in the courthouse and the annex, kind of those being as one. And specifically the instance that we came across in that, the judicial assistant actually was working out of 408, not 408, out of the annex 4th floor courthouse. And she actually, the only restroom that was suitable for her was down here on the main floor of the courthouse. So she had to traverse down to the 3rd floor over elevator. And I think that they, in looking at all those restrooms, they're all accessibility wise, they're all out of compliance. So this would bring all the restrooms in the courthouse and the annex up to compliance.
Looking at the money guy down
So
there.
looking at the money
Looking at the money
guy,
man.
Yeah.
where would this come from?
Gil came and talked to us about this last week, and Tessa and I went over it with Gil, and the availability of REIT money to be able to use that bridge to bridge the gap made sense. And it made sense from a standpoint that option 3 covered all of our bases in terms of being ADA compliant in both the courthouse and the annex. And so we would recommend that you go ahead with option 3 using REIT 1 money, and then that takes the ADA compliance issue off the table completely now for both the courthouse and the annex.
How much would it, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Jerry.
The REIT 1 money, that if you cover the shortfall, how much would be left in the REIT 1 that'd be available? Is that?
Well, as Tessa explained it to me, because we did not bond and use REIT money for payment of the
There's quite a bit in there, isn't there?
the medical examiner's new building, there was capacity to do this. And we also looked at the capacity for the range out at the with the Air Force Base, and that wouldn't be affected. So in terms of prioritization of the use of those REIT monies, this would seem to be a high priority to be able to be ADA compliant.
Probably, it's going to have to be done eventually, just be
Right.
compliant. And I doubt very much that it's going to get cheaper
And we,
as time goes on. So,
I mean, on the project itself, we wanted to, when we went out and started soliciting this, we started out with 2 projects.
right.
We really ended up with 3, just so we could take a really good deep dive into where do we sit accessibility wise. I think John, myself, Jerry, I probably get posed this question at least annually, where we sit, especially here in the courthouse. And this would solve that issue across the board.
And so these are REIT monies that we haven't already spent. These are REIT monies that are
Yeah, we
surplus. Well, you can only spend them so
Always
many
a very,
times.
always a very good question.
Yeah.
We spent this dollar already.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
these are rare, unspent REIT monies. Okay. Comments, Josh or Mary?
I mean, I think it's, I would recommend it, I guess, to just take care of the ADA issue and get that handled in the courthouse while they're doing one, just get them all done. And if Gary says we do have money available, then I will trust that he's correct, since we're not seeing any, any sheets on REIT. So hopefully with the budget, we can see where we're at on that.
Josh?
Yeah, no, I agree. If that's the recommendation, and the funds are there to do it, it seems it's important. Seems like something we should get out of the way, get it done.
Yeah.
So you're using a 10% contingency on a remodel. Are you comfortable that's enough?
I think that's actually a little overkill because
Yeah.
we've already done most of the demolition.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we don't have, because it's a fairly small project, we don't have to do commissioning, which I always make a part of that 10%.
Right.
So I think we're in pretty good shape. I don't think they're going to uncover much of anything that's in the
Anything
way.
else? Okay.
One of the other things we did design into this, which was very unique, is after we're finished with this, if we have any restroom issues, we'll be able to shut off each individual floor. We won't have to come in and shut the
And
water
shut the
off.
whole place down. That's a good idea.
The idea was when we designed it that we could make each floor and separate everything.
That's really good.
So will the plumbing backbone for this building then, with this remodel and stuff, basically be all upgraded? I mean, is there any part of the plumbing system for the courthouse or the annex that is still antiquated old piping that we have to worry about?
We have, so as part of this project, we have 2 issues that are down in the very bottom of this. We've been able to inspect the piping all the way from top to bottom of the courthouse, down in the very basement of the hallway here where we have the lateral run. We have a couple fractures in the cast iron. That is something that we're definitely going to want to try to, as we shut these down and we take care of these, because we'll be doing a lot of that work with the water outages and stuff on the weekends. And that would be the best time to open these up because of the sewer gases and people won't be using them.
Right.
And we're actually, a couple of those that we've identified, we'll be able to actually go in and fix those.
Okay.
We were kind of surprised that they'd been there for quite a while, but I think that usually at the velocity that it's draining out, we had no over spillage from them, but they are definitely fractures and we can see the rust marks in them. But the idea would be is to go in and excavate out those areas around that and actually sever those and then actually couple new plumbing into it.
So if you had the opportunity to actually scope all the drain lines and sewer lines, so you got a pretty good idea of which ones are clogged, where they're clogged at, where the bottlenecks are at. And so
we took a really good look at them, and that's how we found these 2 down in the lateral down below. Actually, it got reported to us as a sewer gas smell from Vicky's group. So when we took the camera down there with American League, that's when we found those.
Okay. All right, so what do you need from us other than the head shake?
The head shake, and I'll get together with Tessa and Gary and we'll have that. We'll go ahead. So where we're at right now with the project, it's already designed. We've already awarded it to the contractor.
Well, no, we haven't awarded it yet. We've been waiting for confirmation. So
Who was the contractor?
CRC. They're out of
Star, Idaho.
Yeah, Star, Idaho, down near Boise.
Yeah, not familiar with them.
They've done a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, they've only been in business for a few years, but they've done quite a bit of work for cities and counties in Washington, Oregon, and Idaho.
Okay.
They look pretty good.
Yep.
And the bids came in really tight, which was
Yeah.
nice. So
Yeah.
it was a good package.
How many bids did you get?
6.
Good. Well, that's good. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we're getting a lot of activity on bids right now. So
Good market.
yeah.
Yeah.
Very good.
All right.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you. So, Mr. Cook and company. You're muted. Kevin?
My comments.
Hello.
Okay.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thanks, Gary.
I'm going to hand this directly off to Rob Lindsay. Thank you very much.
Go ahead, you're on.
Rob? Rob? Apparently Rob's having some difficulty.
I can start if you like.
Okay. Very good.
Actually, can I share my screen? I've got a
Yeah.
PowerPoint thing to.
Chairman French, we also have Joe Carroll who's listening in. Joe Carroll is one of the attorneys working with the irrigation districts on this particular item. He's not zoomed in, so he can't answer any questions, but he is listening in because he's one of the people who will be presenting a petition to the board to form the joint control board, which Mike and Kevin and Rob are going to talk about.
Okay. Very good. All right, Mike, you're on.
Has Rob joined us or?
Yes, I am here now. I apologize. I was unable to hear what was going on before. So anyway, I've got my ears on now. So just a few introductory comments. I'd like to start by thanking Jim Amacio very much. He's been very helpful to us for the past few weeks or months rather, as we've been looking for this. So just
decades. Yeah.
Yeah, decades, actually. Thank you. Just to tee this up, last year representatives of Crown West came in with the notion of a joint control board, which is an alternate approach to managing water aimed primarily at irrigation districts. And it's a method to share water by reducing infrastructure costs, essentially sharing water through the aquifer. It's it's an idea that on its makes great sense, I think, for in certain areas of water management. But they would like to try to, propose this idea within the Spokane Valley Rathdrum Prairie aquifer amongst the various water providers in this area. Remember, there are over a dozen water providers that serve the Spokane Valley region and all share in the aquifer. And so Mike is going to take you through kind of a review of what's happened since the last briefing, which was in late 2019, and go through the process of establishing a joint control board. And then we'll tee it up for additional discussion after that. So Mike, take it away.
Okay. Yeah, so as Rob mentioned, in September 2019, we received a request from the attorneys and a representative from Crown West Realty, and they wanted to discuss the idea of forming a joint board of control. The primary purpose for this particular joint board of control would be to facilitate water rights transfers among purveyors withdrawing from the Spokane Valley Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer. And one of the things that they believe that can be accomplished with these water rights transfers in particular are moving inchoate water rights, or the unused portion of the water rights that the purveyors hold. At that meeting, they proposed the members would be Crown West, which is the Spokane Industrial Park, Vera Water and Power, and Spokane County. Crown West has some water rights that they feel like they will not be needing going into the future, and Vera Water and Power has an interest in gaining those water rights. And so I think that is the impetus to move this along. Since that briefing, the idea has been discussed by the Spokane Aquifer Joint Board, the group of purveyors on the Spokane Valley Aquifer. And they had a lot of discussion about it. And the conclusion is that the SAJB did not want to become the vehicle for the Joint Board of Control. And there was, varied interest among the purveyors, and they decided that, well, the idea seems like a good idea, but we're not sure that, all the purveyors were not necessarily on board, but some were. So they basically said, if those purveyors want to do it, then they can go ahead and do that. So Vera Water and Power kind of started to take the lead on this, and they developed a draft petition and then also the formation documents that outline who is going to do what. The idea that was presented, and I think is still the idea, is that this would largely be an application-driven process. The joint board would essentially function in that the people bringing the applications to the joint board for water rights transfer would bear the responsibility for creating all of the documentation and creating all the documents and doing all of the work, essentially. And so, at least as it was presented to us, especially back in the 2019 briefing, was that the joint board would not in itself be doing a lot of the administrative work. So that's kind of the selling point, I think, that they were trying to make. The signatories to the petition right now that we have seen is Crown West Realty, Vera Water and Power, Modern Water District, Moab Irrigation District, Carn Hope Irrigation District, and Pasadena Park Irrigation District. So going back to the RCW 8780, details the process to form a joint board of control. And it's a fairly deliberate process. A petition is filed with the county. The county commissioners set a date for a public hearing, put out a public notice. They notice to ecology. They conduct the public hearing and hear all the evidence submitted in support or against. And then the county commissioners determine if a joint board is in the public interest, is a benefit to irrigation entities, and will not be detrimental to water right interests outside of proposed joint board jurisdiction. And then the county commissioners adopt a resolution creating the board. And so in looking at this process for Spokane County, I think there's still some questions that remain as far as what the legal authority of the board would be. It was presented to us that the board can conduct water rights transfers that are the same as would be accomplished through Department of Ecology or through the Water Conservancy Board. Although in Chelan County, a joint board was also formed, and in I believe it was the same attorney as was for Crown West. And Chelan County actually declined to participate as a member, but did determine to authorize the formation of the joint board. Department of Ecology's Water Resources Program Manager sent a letter to I believe it was to their attorney, and essentially saying that Department of Ecology did not agree with the authority of the joint board to conduct water rights transfers that are recognized by the state. And so I guess what really this seems to be is that an approach that is not necessarily legally tested. There have been some water rights transfers that have been done by the Chelan County Joint Board of Control that involved some municipal rights, and Ecology did not challenge them. But nothing has been subsequently done with those rights to actually substantiate that they have been transferred. And so our recommendation is that the county conduct the hearing and hear the arguments for and against, and proceed just as the joint board process was envisioned to happen, and to then determine at that point in time whether it's in the public interest, benefit to irrigation entities, and not detrimental to water rights interests. If the county would like to join at a later date, there's no problem with that. That can happen. And so I think given the legal uncertainty of what the joint board is attempting to facilitate in this instance, and along with the county being envisioned as a decision-making body that's going to look at the pros and cons of creating the joint board, I think it's best if the county retain that position, and then after the joint board is formed, determine whether it's appropriate for the county to join as a member.
So what would be the timing of that hearing, Mike?
Well, the petition hasn't been filed. We have seen a draft of the petition, and I'm not sure when they are. I think they're still getting the signatures, and one of the outstanding that they needed to find out was if the county would join as a member right from the start.
Jim?
Chairman French, Mike is actually correct. The petition will be submitted hopefully relatively soon. Once we get it, as Mike has indicated, we check the petition to ensure it's consistent with the statute, and then we advertise, and we have to advertise for quite a while. So it's about a month time frame. And once the board holds a public hearing, you have a certain time frame to make a decision as to whether or not you want to move forward and create the Board of Joint Control. So Commissioner French, it probably is not going to happen. Maybe by the end of the year, we're not sure. It depends upon when we get the petition. The reason, as Mike articulated, that it's in front of you today is the petitioners were interested in revisiting whether or not the county wanted to join the Board of Joint Control. The statute provides that in order to participate, you have to be an irrigation district. The terminology irrigation district was modified in 2003, and it's broad enough to include municipalities. And because Spokane County has wells into the aquifer in some of our golf courses, and we also own water rights in YRA 55, arguably, we have the ability, if we want, to sign off on the petition. So the petitioners felt they'd like to bring back before the county commissioners, revisiting whether or not you want to sign off on the petition. If you sign off on the petition, then you'll ultimately have to take action on the petition. And I don't think being part of the signatures would preclude you from taking action on forming the joint water board if you wanted to. Mike has indicated to you that it's his recommendation that the county commissioners act on the petition once it's presented, but we don't sign the petition at this point in time. That we stay on the sidelines and observe how effective the joint water control board is if it's set up, because under the documents which have been prepared, once the joint board is set up, any irrigation district can petition to get in, and then it just takes action by the joint water control board to allow us to get in. So again, the reason we're here today is to see if the county commissioners want to sign the petition, recognizing that we don't have to sign it one way or the other, and more than likely legally we have the ability to participate if we want.
If we sign the petition before we hold the hearing, does that prejudice our position with regard to the hearing?
That's a good question, Chairman French. Joe Carroll asked the answer to that question. In my view, assuming the appearance of fairness doctrine applies, and this is quasi-judicial, I think it's legislative and it doesn't, but assuming it did, under the doctrine of necessity, the Board of County Commissioners would have to take action on the petition, because otherwise there's no way to move forward.
Okay.
So, Mike, did I misstate anything, Mike or Rob? Please correct me if I did.
No, that's correct.
No, I would just add one thing that makes this particular joint board unique compared to applications in other areas of the state, and that is the interest on the part of the water purveyors in this area to include inchoate municipal rights as part of this joint board. And going back to what I had mentioned earlier about this being focused on irrigation districts, and the intent of this of the joint boards is for irrigation districts to be able to manage water amongst themselves, reducing infrastructure costs. So as Mike mentioned before, this is legally untested, using joint boards of control to get into the marketing of these inchoate or unused municipal rights. So this is brand new territory with respect to joint boards of control.
So let me ask you a question, if you don't mind. Are you, so at one time there was an interest in the valley for some of the water districts to convert their irrigation category to municipal or inchoate rights. What is the status of that initiative? Were they successful in doing that, or are their water rights still irrigation rights?
Well, I'll take a first swing at this. I know that Jim and Mike can fill in around the edges. Moab Irrigation District, I'll use them as an example. I know that for quite some time, they've been interested in converting some of their irrigation rights into municipal rights. And they were having, it's been a long-term discussion and legal matter between the state ecology and Moab. As I understand, Moab was successful in converting some of those irrigation rights to municipal rights. I don't know that they were able to get all of the water that they were hoping for from those irrigation rights, but there are other water providers. I believe Vera has significant irrigation rights that they have interest in converting to municipal rights, and I think that's an ongoing challenge for them at this point. So I think every water purveyor out there has a slightly different situation in terms of their portfolio of municipal versus irrigation rights. But converting irrigation to municipal is an ongoing issue.
And the ownership of those rights does not automatically make those municipal rights and stuff. So for instance, the county owning water rights doesn't necessarily make them municipal rights just because we own them. It's the underlying characteristic of those rights that we've acquired. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely, yes. And there, the purpose of use for irrigation or agricultural use rather, is a distinctly different purpose than say municipal uses for supplying water to homes.
Okay. Jim, you had a question?
Well, and as Mike and Rob alluded to, Chairman French, the purpose of the Joint Control Board is very similar to the County Water Conservation Board. That is to say, Commissioner French, if you wanted to change the particular use, right now you go to the County Water Conservation Board. They in consultation with the college, you make a decision. That decision is appealable to the Pollution Control Hearings Board. That decision is appealable to court. If you had a joint control board, the application by the irrigation districts could be made to the Joint Control Board, and then their decision doesn't go to ecology, doesn't go to the Pollution Control Hearings Board, but it goes directly to Superior Court. And so the whole hope of forming the Joint Control Board is to more timely act on some of these requests. And of course, as Mike has alluded to, there's still some question as to whether or not ecology will recognize some of the decisions by the Joint Control Board as opposed to using the other methodology.
I wouldn't say there's much of a question because the Water Resources Program Manager point blankly said in the letter that they did not recognize the transfers done by a joint board of control as going through the statutory process of a water rights transfer.
Right.
And that was a 2015 piece of correspondence. Is that correct, Mike? And I'm not saying it would be any different, Chairman French, but I think Mike has accurately reflected what occurred then. And of course, when the board holds its public hearing to consider setting up the Joint Control Board, ecology will be notified, and we would expect, Chairman French, that ecology will come in and raise whatever concerns or issues they want to raise. And ultimately, if the board formed a Joint Control Board, ecology may have the legal ability to challenge the formation as well as other actions that the Joint Control Board may take.
Okay. So Josh, Mary, any questions, comments, concerns, observations?
Well, so if I'm understanding correctly, it's if we form this, it may not even be able to hold water. No pun intended here, but like, I mean, it could just be deemed irrelevant, and we've gone through this whole process of creating this, and then we reach a huge roadblock at the end, and I guess we would have to dissolve it, or it would be kind of it wouldn't have any authority. It just, I mean, to me, it seems like we're kind of ahead of the process here before we have a lot of the answers. I'm trying to think back of when we've done something similar to this, and I can't really think of where we've created an entity when we don't really know if the entity actually holds any authority or if we can create it.
Yeah, well, and I guess I would add that with respect to the question that we're asking today, as far as whether the county should join, that's my, I guess, probably the primary concern is that we're not sure what the authorities are and how well it will survive the legal tests. And there will definitely be legal tests because Crown West has been involved in some of these water right transfers and acquisitions across the state that have really raised the profile of water right acquisitions from out-of-state entities. And so if we were a member of the board, how much would we get tied up in all the litigation around it? I'm not so sure that if the board authorizes the formation of a joint board and we're not a part of it, I'm not sure what the risk of litigation is. seems like that, with much less if it's just formed and it's its own entity unto itself, and it's just been authorized by the county commissioners per the RCW.
But if ecology has already said they don't recognize these types of transfers, I guess that's sort of, I don't understand why we would participate or kind of move along a process that they've already said they don't recognize the work that board would do. I mean, am I misunderstanding that?
Commissioner, I would offer that this is just part of what I would characterize and the ongoing legal testing of water management. And so it's very likely that if this joint board of control goes through and then the current petitioners seek to exchange water rights, through this joint board of control, it will likely be tested, and it'll either prevail or it won't. I think there have always been, water resource policy, like so many environmental policies, are actually implemented in the courts. And this is an example of that. And so we have water purveyors who in this region have an interest in sharing their resource, some of it being inchoate or unused or reserved water, if you will. They want to share this water and use the aquifer itself as the infrastructure. It makes a lot of sense. It really does, in terms of when I, as a water manager for the county, look at what makes sense in terms of providing water to our citizens. It's not a bad way to go. It's just a way that the state ecology, they don't like it because it kind of takes them out of the picture. And so, in a way, it's just one more step in this ongoing legal dance, if you will, of how we manage our water. So, I think where Mike and certainly where I'm coming from is, at this point, we just don't see a lot of upside to the county jumping into that legal decision right now. Our golf courses are well supplied. We're working with parks right now and moving water from Saltese over to Plants Ferry. We really don't have a dog in the fight, as it were, and would really benefit from participating in a joint board at this point. And so that's where our recommendation comes from. I have every anticipation that Crown West and the other water purveyors would like to move forward and would like to test this legally. So
what's the latest conversation with regard to the timing of adjudication? And is that being aggressively pursued by anybody, or is it still on the same timetable it's been on for the last half century?
They actually, Ecology did a report to the legislature about adjudication, and they have said they are planning to move towards adjudication in the Nooksack watershed and the Upper Columbia watershed right away, and the Spokane and Walla Walla basins would be next. So I think next is within the next 10 years, 15 years. So I think that's the timeline on adjudication for this area. So,
and does being part of this district help or hurt us any? Or is it just really neutral?
I think it's neutral. Well, it would be interesting in adjudication to see how these, if a joint board was formed, how those water right transfers that were done through it would survive adjudication. I'm not sure how that would play out. And so the other thing I want to make sure I say is that we think that the county joining as a member is not necessarily maybe the right approach. Actually forming the joint board or authorizing the formation, I think that is probably I think it's best to hear the arguments for and against in a public setting, because we really haven't heard from ecology about what they think about this. And like Rob said, moving water around without having to actually move it through a pipe through the aquifer really does make a lot of sense on a lot of levels. So it could be a good thing. And so if these other water districts, they want to do that, I think not necessarily recommending against that, just as it relates to the county being an actual member and signing the petition. I think it's
okay. Jim?
Well, and so Commissioner Kearns, the sole issue in front of the board today is, does the Board of County Commissioners want to sign the petition as an irrigation district, as that term is defined under the law, before it's submitted to the Board of County Commissioners? Staff is not asking you to take any action once the petition is submitted. As Mike and Rob have indicated, that will occur down the road. So the only issue we're asking today is if you'd like to sign the petition, and I believe that Mike is recommending, and Rob also, that at this juncture, they're suggesting that we not sign the petition, that when the petition comes in, it be processed as provided by law. And if the joint board is ultimately formed, the county commissioners later on, as a quote irrigation district as defined in the law, can determine if they want to join later on.
Okay. So that's the decision ahead of us. So what are your thoughts, either Mary or Josh?
I would go with a recommendation from Rob and Mike.
Okay, Josh?
Yeah, from the way I'm understanding this, I think that's probably the way to go.
Okay, there you go. You got your direction.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Thank you.
so I think I'm hearing the board say by consensus that they are not going to sign the petition in conjunction with formation of the Joint Control Board at this juncture, but they will act on it when it's submitted by the appropriate irrigation districts, as that terminology is defined. Thank you, Chairman French. That's exactly what we wanted to hear this morning.
Okay, very good. So the next topic of conversation.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Yep, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Next topic is CARES Act funding. And Carrie, are you online with us? There she is.
Yes, I am.
You
How
want
are
to
you
go
this
ahead and
morning?
lead us out on this?
Yes. I believe Jeff, is Lynn joining us today as well? Or are you going to present?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, there you are. So commissioners, we've received a request from Aging and Long-Term Care. And Lynn, do you want to explain it to the commissioners?
Sure, I'll start us off and then I'll hand it over to Jeff. And we also have John Beck on the call as well, who's our Business Administration Director. So thank you so much for entertaining our proposal. We had heard about additional CARES Act funding being available through the county and figured it would be a good idea to reach out since though Aging and Long-Term Care has been a recipient of CARES Act and FFCRA funds directly through the state, we are finding that we are expending out the funding that we have, and our funds are good through September of 2021. And one of those programs we've been operating in Spokane County through Greater Spokane County Meals on Wheels, we found we had much greater demand than we ever anticipated. Back early in the pandemic, we had to shut down all of the meal sites across the county because of the risk of COVID to older adults who are going to these group meal sites. We originally started with switching people into home delivered meal programs so they would get home delivered meals. But we're looking for a way to kind of replicate some other models we were seeing across the state and across the nation. So the model we ended up using is one we actually use in our northern 3 counties, where we don't often have access to senior centers to do group meals to begin with. So we worked with Jeff at Greater Spokane County Meals on Wheels to replicate what's called the Diner's Choice program. So this is a program where older adult is able to get coupons that they can redeem at participating restaurants to get a meal. And those meals are healthy, nutritious. We had a little bit less requirements with this funding as far as nutritional requirements, but still kind of provides a way for an older adult to get out of the house, get some nutrition, and have a little bit more social contact. So Jeff launched the program and started with a small pilot and then rapidly expanded the program. So once it opened up, it filled up very, very, very quickly and almost immediately had to go into a wait list. We found it's been extremely successful in rural parts of Spokane County. So outside of the city proper, we're finding that's where it's doing really, really well. And it's helping to support local restaurants and businesses that have stated without this funding and this support, they may have had to close their doors, especially early on in the pandemic. So we're looking for funding to continue this program and give us a chance to extend our funding a little bit more. We were looking at potentially having to shut it down by the end of the year. We were already going to allocate some additional funds. If Spokane County is willing to give us additional funds, that will help us continue the program through the first quarter of next year. And then we can see if we get any other federal assistance to help keep these programs going. So with that, I'll pass it off to Jeff to talk a little bit about the program and what it does and who he's serving.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to come and present to y'all. You know, Lynn gave a pretty good summary of the program, again, that started as a pilot in Spokane Valley with around 30 seniors. At the height of the program, we now have over 850 seniors throughout Spokane County on the Diner's Choice program, where they're receiving the coupons to eat at local restaurants. It's been a big win for the seniors who are traditionally, these seniors are more mobile, and the home delivered model wasn't an ideal fit for them. It's replicated a lot of the socialization that they would have gotten at the congregate meal locations. Restaurant owners and staff have gotten to know the seniors and to check in on them. And ultimately, it was a big blessing to the restaurant community who was really hurt early on in the pandemic. And so we were really excited about this kind of innovative approach to take that federal funding and have the most impact in Spokane County as we possibly could. First and foremost in senior nutrition, but also in supporting the local restaurant economy. What we're looking at now is, again, we had hoped to be able to extend this program as long as possible, potentially through the first quarter. But the popularity of the program, obviously in getting meals from local restaurants, is looking at us where we need to potentially scale it back. And we are looking to keep it going at some level in the rural community. So we shut it down in Spokane and Spokane Valley, where we have most resources to serve seniors in another capacity. But we are looking to try to keep that going and get seniors about 10 coupons a month to continue to eat from local restaurants in the rural areas. Ultimately, with the availability of any new funding that's given to us, if it were able to start today, we can instantly start, translating those funds into meals redeemed at local restaurants for seniors. And any funds we receive today, available for use as soon as possible, does extend the life of the program further out into next year, where we can look at other funding models to try to keep that going. And so, ultimately, without additional funds, it will wind down this year. There's just, it's a great program, but it's truly only sustainable, with the emergency funding that's available. But every coupon redeemed is a meal provided to a senior and a meal purchased at a local restaurant. And we've just received a lot of support from the restaurant community, as you can imagine, for it, for the seniors as well. So any funding would definitely extend the life of the program, and we've got the infrastructure in place to keep it going as long as the funding is available.
So Lynn, and Jeff, I want to be clear because we talked about this. The funding requested from the commissioners today would be spent by December 30th, and the other funding then would extend the program into 2021, correct?
Correct.
Yes, that's correct.
And the requested amount is 173,250. Okay.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Questions, Mary?
Yeah, so Carrie kind of asked the question, so I think that's great. Then you can use the other funds to move it forward, which would be helpful. It seems like it's kind of a win-win for the restaurant and the elderly people. Is there any kind of requirement or for them to participate in this program?
Yeah, they have to be enrolled through AltQ services. So we would take the same information, the same nutritional needs and assessments that we would for a traditional home delivered or congregate client. All of the coupons that are printed, they're printed on secure bank paperwork, so there's not an opportunity to copy or duplicate it. Every coupon is traceable back to the senior in the printing series. So we have a lot of fidelity and trust in the process, to the program. And the restaurants, we tried to make the process easy for them. So they submit any coupons they have on a Friday, and we're able to turn around and pay them by that following Tuesday to give them the capital that they need to keep operating, because a lot of the restaurants are really on kind of a week-to-week basis.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that.
Hey, Jerry?
Jeff and Lynn, a question about it's a great idea about the rural restaurants that aren't city-centric, whether it's Spokane. Do you numerically have like a number of how many restaurants in what would be the unincorporated county we're talking about?
Well, total in the program, at its height, we have between 35 and 40 restaurants throughout Spokane County. In Deer Park, just kind of an example, and I'm going off some numbers off the top of my head, we have about 7 or 8 restaurants. In Cheney, I think we have 3 restaurants. We've got the Harvester in Spangle, which is serving the South County area. I think the Harvest Moon, which I believe is in Rockford. So we've had great participation in the rural areas, and really helping out those restaurants that otherwise would have been in a bad way.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Josh?
No, the only question I had was already addressed.
Okay. So, Josh, you're the representative for AltQ. You want to do the pleasure?
Oh, absolutely. Mr. Chair, I move to approve and authorize the dispersion of CARES Act dollars up to the amount of $173,250 to provide for the Diner's Choice program as presented today.
I will second that motion.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Let the record reflect the motion passed unanimously. Thank you, Lynn, and your team for all the great work you're doing to keep old folks like Jerry and me fed.
We appreciate it.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for the support. We appreciate it.
Lynn, I'll be in touch with you about the contract.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Carrie.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, so Carrie, next up is Todd Milkey.
Yeah, is Todd in the room?
No. Would recognize him. He's not here.
Wow.
So do you want to go on, and then maybe Todd will be joining us here soon?
Yeah, I'll go through my other things. We had, I think Gina sent it out for 192 for Todd. We still had a request for respirators that was still outstanding. So here he comes.
Here he comes.
Oh, I'm telling you.
Hey, we are to you, sir.
Timing is impeccable. Timing is everything.
Way to make an entrance.
Great. Great. You have the document before you. For those like me that would need my glasses to do that, Al, you got one. I have extras. They need to be distributed. And I'm not sure how much Carrie's been able to give you in the way of background.
None.
Just
okay. Just stand it up.
So when we first started the process of the county being being a direct appropriation of CARES Act dollars because of population, this is one of the first requests that came in, was for these respirators. These are an advanced air protection system They provide the maximum level of protection against viral, bacterial, and biological agents. So when you really have no idea what environment you're entering, this is the maximum level of protection you can go in. And so it's like, when are you likely to do that? Is when you have somebody that's so sick that they are basically non-responsive, or if they are deceased. And especially if you've got more than one body in an area and you have no idea what caused that circumstance. So you have no idea what you're entering into. We submitted this request. Like some of the other equipment requests, our number has been 300, which is approximately 250 commissioned officers. And anytime you have equipment that is personally sized to the individual, we have extras to accommodate, number one, if you have any equipment breakdowns, or as people transition in and out of the agency, you may need more mediums or extra larges and stuff like that. So it just gives us a little bit of a cushion to handle that. We had a supplemental request for 2020 of $100,000 for the purpose of purchasing these. And so thanks to Carrie, she's like, hey, look, as these rules are coming out with regard to CARES Act dollars, there's pretty strong prohibition with regard to supplanting. And so until you expend the $100,000, then let's be really careful about that, even though we recognize the $100,000 doesn't cover your 300 request. So, and we've been holding back on the 100,000. We actually initially used part of the 100,000 to purchase the initial PPE. So we just from a cash flow basis. And then once we got the reimbursement, we backfilled it. So, so what we did is we executed the use of the $100,000 in the supplemental appropriation to purchase as many as we could. And that number is 175. So we have now, I would say, exhausted the use of the supplemental appropriation. So no longer do I believe that we have the concern about a supplanting issue with regard to CARES Act dollars. What this means is we're now down to the last 125 to fulfill the overall request of 300. This would be kind of the final placement of, when you enter a situation. We have the N95 mask. Tony's done a great job in putting together the PPE on behalf of the entire county, including the sheriff's office. So we have that as kind of a first response level of safety of PPE. And then from there, we can escalate with the maximum point of protection for the employees and for the public is the C50 responders. So that becomes the request then, is we had to get the supplemental appropriation out of the way. We had to fully exhaust it before we were allowed to make a request for anything else. And so that's what we've done at this point. And we're down to the remaining 125 respirators.
Okay. Carrie, you've reviewed this, you're good?
Yeah, as long as the first initial, the first problem was, 100,000 had been previously budgeted for this, but if these additional 125 were not budgeted, then Todd, is it 87,500 then for today's request?
Yes, is that the number that I submitted? Yes, it's on top, yes. Okay. Yes. And
okay.
Unfortunately, they were cheaper 2 months ago.
Carrie, is there any problem in if there's not a supplanting issue to consider not to exceed $90,000 just because of what Todd just said? Just a little cushion in there in case the prices go up or there's something glitch in the supply chain. There's nothing to compromise as anything if we word it that way, is there?
No, I don't think that's an issue. The issue always was, Jerry, because it was in their budget, they had to spend that. That was the only issue.
Yeah.
And purchasing has executed that purchase order.
We always get
for the 175 that would expend, I think it's like $99,140, whatever that amount was. But what we have found is the per unit cost has gone up. When we first started this process, the per unit cost for these masks was about $585, $590. And as you can see, now they're just a smidgen under $700 a piece.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any questions, either Mary or Josh? Okay. So, Josh?
All right, Mr. Chair, I move to approve and authorize the expenditures of up to $87,500 for the purchase of the remaining 125 C-50 first responder kit respirator masks as presented by Todd Melke today.
I think Jerry just asked for it to be a not to exceed 90. Is that-
But yeah, but then I thought Carrie said that wasn't necessary.
I think her concern was that they'd spend the $100,000 was the bigger issue, not concerned about up to $90,000. Is that right, Carrie? You're on mute, Carrie.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, up to $90,000 to purchase the respirator masks as presented by Todd Belke.
I'll second that.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Let the record reflect motion passed unanimously. Then, thank you, Mr. Milkey.
Thank you, commissioners. Have a great day.
Hey, Carrie, back to you. Oh, Todd, Josh?
Before Todd leaves, Todd, I heard from the sheriff there was concern about a request for CARES dollars for a fingerprint machine to help clear out a backlog. Are you going to be submitting a request to us for that?
So the sheriff called you?
He did.
Okay.
We don't necessarily need a rundown today. I'm just saying if I told the sheriff we hadn't received any documentation on that. So I was just going to ask you, can you get us some documentation so we can see what the ask is and the dollar amount?
The reason that they haven't got any documentation, Commissioner, is that we've been discussing this, and between Gary and John and I, we're struggling to see how this fits into the CARES dollars.
It's under $50,000.
It's under $50,000, which we have the authorization to spend. We just
the sheriff, the number the sheriff gave me was substantially higher than $50,000.
I don't. Nope. Not for fingerprinting machine.
Oh.
No, the
Okay.
machine, I believe the machine is about $28,300. So I think the request that went to the administration was up to $30,000.
Okay, yeah, that's a big difference in the number I was.
We're still having that discussion. It's not that we're, anybody's trying to get something they don't deserve, but we're speaking for us. We're very, very concerned about if it doesn't meet the standard that somewhere down the road we come back and you folks ask us, why are we have to reimburse this money, for CARES dollars when it didn't meet the matrix? So that's what we're discussing. Does it actually?
Sounds good.
Yeah, so that's the evaluation. I think on this issue, there are two. Number one is what is the relationship with CARES and CARES Act dollars? The second piece of it, I think, is just from a county perspective, which is we weren't able to process these the way we have traditionally done it, which is just come in during our open office hours, and people would line up next to the machine. We only have one machine. And so as a county, you're required to process all the fingerprinting and driver's license scans for the purpose of concealed weapons permit. As a result of process issues, what's happened is we now do these only by appointment, where we can disinfect the area between each appointment. That means much longer processing time for each one. It means that we have now found ourselves to be in a backlog situation, and you as an individual aren't allowed to go to an adjacent county and have this done and bring it back in, because we're certifying that it's you when you come in and get fingerprinted.
Mm-hmm.
Our current backlog is now, I think our appointments are now towards the end of March of 2021, and we're flowing into April before somebody can come in and be fingerprinted to either have their concealed weapons permit renewed or a new one issued. And so, we're beginning to deal with people who are growing in intensity over their anger about this situation. And we assume it's just a matter of time before those calls will start transitioning to the commissioner's office. And so certainly in the spirit of no surprises, want to make sure you're aware of the status of this process. And at this point, we're doing the best we can with what we've got.
So I want to say maybe 2-3 months ago or so, we authorized paying for a court commissioner for the purpose of alleviating a backlog. I mean, this is another thing where a backlog has been created because of COVID. Wouldn't this qualify because it's helping clear out a COVID-related backlog?
That's part of the discussion, Commissioner, because you can make an argument that when we had the last election, we had a run on the concealed weapons permit. So you could argue that they would already be backlogged because of the upcoming election. And that's part of what the concern is. Is this COVID related, or would this have been a backlog regardless of the virus or not? That's really what the discussion. There's no doubt they have a backlog. Everything.
Well, but the whole program was shut down back in March, correct? Like you could not get a concealed carry permit because the whole program was shut down because of COVID.
It was.
That's correct. That's correct.
So, okay.
Yeah,
we'll get it worked out.
Let us know what you figure out.
We'll get it worked out.
And however we do this, I mean, one of the things, the discussion that we've been having internally is perhaps we could create one location, one customer window, if you will, out at the Valley Precinct, and then continue our existing customer window here at the Public Safety Building. That would create two separate lines very far away from each other. And so that was part of the internal thinking in how to address this.
Okay, more to come?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so Carrie, we're back to you.
I'm back on. How are you?
Good.
So, commissioners, I have two miscellaneous requests in today that I'd like to discuss with you. I talked to Jason at Second Harvest, and he's looking for an increase in about 2.5 million for additional food purchases. They're just going gangbusters. So I told him, I think I sent you all the letter giving the numbers that they have fed up until this point. So they believe they can go through all previous funding and including the 2.5, which will take us into into the end of December, and possibly be able to address all of the need currently that they're experiencing. It's substantial.
Okay. Any questions for Carrie on the Second Harvest? What would be the pleasure of the board then?
Yeah, no, I'll support their ask.
Okay.
What's the dollar amount, Carrie?
2.5 million.
2.5?
2.5.
Okay. All right. Well, anybody else want to say anything first? I guess I don't want to jump out in front of you two.
Yeah, no, I support the ask too. I mean, I think that's been one of our #1 priorities is ensuring that we have that. So, nope.
Okay. Looking for a motion, sir.
All right. Mr. Chair, I move to approve and authorize CARES dollars in the amount up to $2,500,000 to provide for funding for Second Harvest Food Bank in their latest request, which is on the screen, dated October 21st, 2020.
I'll second that.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Let the record reflect motion passed unanimously. Then, next item, Ms. Carey.
Yes, I had one other request for an increase on budget, and it was by the Inlander to increase their budget from 720,000 by an additional 135. That would allow them to do their final pullout guide. I find it reasonable given the amount of documentation and other items and work that they've been doing in the community. And I would, I would tell the commissioners, I've met with them substantially. So I don't think that it's an unreasonable request.
Okay. Any questions for Carrie, either Josh or Mary? Okay, chair's open to a motion then.
Mr. Chair, move to approve and authorize up to $135,000 of additional CARES dollars for the Inlander to continue their previously approved CARES Act dispersion. as presented by Carrie today.
I'll second that.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye, let the record reflect the motion passed unanimously. Then, Carrie, have you got the next one, or is this, we down to Cindy?
I think we're down to Cindy today.
Cindy, you're up.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. Happy Monday morning. I want to thank you, first of all, for allowing us some time this morning to present to you an idea that we've come up with. I'm going to share my screen so you can see our presentation. And then we'll go through some of the data points of why we're here today. I first wanted to introduce that we're all here today in the partners, and we'll talk about who's with me today about the county hospitality relief program, and trying to come up with something that's really going to help those in need in our small business community that we have seen through some of the work that we've been doing the last couple of months. And what I did is pull together for you some data from just even the first round of our Open Together program. And when I pulled out codes, what we call 71 and 72 of the industry sector codes, which represent our hospitality industry and restaurants, they were 25% of our applicants, and they received about 30% of the funding that amounted to a little over $2 million, that total pool that was first allocated. And when we did ask some of those applicants to give us data on their gross revenue changes from March through July 1st of 2019 to the same time period in 2020. And they self-reported a decline of gross revenue of over $42 million in that 4-month span from the time stamp of 19 to 2020. The COVID-related expenses that they self-declared was over $9 million. And so if you talk about an impact to a business sector industry, if loss of gross revenue and you add in additional expenses not budgeted, you're looking at over a $51 million impact to just one specific industry in your county. This next bullet basically takes into account that 51 million minus the 2.3 million that we invested in that sector. I looked at some data on PPP and idle funding. There still exists, even with some funding that came into these applicants, over $30 million. Now, mind you, this was just of July 1st that was being reported. And if you go over to the right on the FTE that we asked about, they reported to us that they saw a drop in their industry of over 45% in those few months. And that was just that was during closures. And then we reopened that sector some. They added a little over 1,400 jobs during that time. But as of July 1st, the sector itself was still down over 32% from where they were March 1st. So in this county, in just the application pool for Open Together, we saw 761 jobs lost in that time period. So a very significant impact to this industry. Oops, excuse me. And so I'd like to have Meg Winchester with Visit Spokane and Mark Richards with Downtown Spokane Partnership talk a little bit more about what the sector need is we're seeing statewide and in your county from some of our research. So Meg and Mark.
Thank you, Cindy. Good morning, commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity. Leisure and hospitality statewide experience the highest job declines and remain the hardest impact sectors, as we all are seeing on a daily basis. Data shows a decline of 43% in February through May of 2020. Only marginal recovery since then, with another projected wave of loss due to the winter season on the horizon. And that's just with talking about the COVID and not the weather that we will experience here in Spokane. We'll get a little bit more into that. Mark, did you want to say a few words?
Sure. Yeah, if you move to slide 4, Cindy, thank you. Yeah, so commissioners, good morning. So just a couple quick highlights. One, as you probably are aware, in Spokane County, the hospitality sector lost 50% of its employment base from, and this chart is, I think, going from high to low. We're still down 25% year over year. In the county MSA, those job losses represent 40% of the overall job losses year over year in the private sector. And keep in mind, that also means that segment includes quick service, which their market is actually up. So that's skewing the numbers. And then lastly, I would just say, in terms of just that kind of a good anecdotal for downtown, we have over 100 businesses that qualify as either hospitality or eateries. We've had approximately 25 to 27 closures, business closures, since March. and over half of those are in this hospitality and restaurant or eatery segment. So I think we can, kind of report out what we're seeing on the macro level, certainly happening right here in the downtown as well.
So in the sector aspect, accommodation and food services are still seeing the highest initial jobless claims in Spokane County, and this is as of 10/5/2020. I thought it would be really nice, or we thought it'd be very nice for you to hear from actually one of our restaurant owners, Derek Baziotis. I can see again. He's the owner and operator of Benny's in Cheney, and he's also the president of the Spokane, Washington Hospitality Association chapter. So I'm just going to ask Derek to say a few words.
Thanks, Meg. Good morning, everyone, and thanks again for letting us present this program to you. I am a small business owner, and I've been in the industry my entire life. In March, not knowing what was to come, we went ahead and shut down our restaurant for a month and a half. We opened back up in May, and the estimated dollar amount needed to open back up was $10,000. I fear that if a business were to close down now due to the winter and restricted occupancy, that they, or frankly myself, would not be able to open back up. Most of our restaurants have been doing everything they can to stay open, like building patios, changing menu items to accommodate to-goes, changing hours, and building family-style to-go items. This has been especially hard on us, and we are beat down and tired. I know these funds would be a beacon of light for us. Winter is coming has been the slogan for the industry for the last month. Unfortunately, it has changed to winter is here. Full-service restaurateurs like myself are left with 50% occupancy and no outdoor dining. These funds would allow us to stay operational and help us through what is always a tough time for full-service restaurants. Washington Hospitality Association projects that we will see 35% permanent loss of business in our industry if we don't do anything. The program's funds would be the relief that a lot of restaurants desperately need. Thank you, guys.
And I'm going to introduce now, and I don't believe Alicia, if she's on this call yet, or Kara, can maybe speak to the purpose of the program.
Yes, so it appears that Alicia wasn't able to join at this moment, but I'm happy to talk just for a moment about, we've been really outreaching to the restaurant industry really for a couple months and really trying to determine what is the best course of action to really give them help and assistance, knowing that if restaurants were able to open back up, that they're, as Derek was describing, the cost of doing so is very high, and knowing that their capacity is and occupancy has remained very low has been very problematic. And so that's what we're really supporting here. GSI is 110% behind this effort, supporting this effort alongside all of our great partners in this work. And GSI fully supports the program and is really looking forward to getting some much needed relief to this sector.
I can address a little bit about the program partners. GSI would be the contract holder for this program and engage similar program partners as we did with Open Together. So of course, the GSI is your main contract holder, the Greater Spokane Valley Chamber of Commerce, Downtown Spokane Partnership, Visit Spokane, and new to this group because of the specialized sector focus is the Washington Hospitality Association. We will have additional program partners and or service agreements with a few additional partners as well. And we will address that a little bit later on just in the next few slides. And then Lance, have you maybe address some of the grant details of the program?
Yeah, thank you, Cindy, and thank you, Commissioners Cooney, French, and Kearns for hearing us today. I'll tackle the section on the small business grant program details. And so, as mentioned earlier, GSI would be the administrator of the program with the assistance provided by the partner organizations, similar to how we executed the Open Together grant program. We will be branding this program as the Spokane County Hospitality Relief Grant. And so you'll see a very forward county focused brand on where the relief dollars are coming from. And then additionally, the grant fund would be made up, our request is for a $10 million grant fund, made up of dollars from the Spokane County CARES dollars. Businesses in the pool of eligible applicants would be awarded up to $20,000 as a max grant. And then the targeted date for the funding to be sent to those awardees would be December 4th, 2020. Next slide. Thanks, Cindy. As far as eligibility goes, it's very similar to our Open Together grant qualifications. I'm going to run through the high points of the differences that we're suggesting within this program. We're suggesting utilizing the federal guidance on the small business classification of 249 employees or under as of March 1, 2020. Again, that's tied to the federal classification, and then also allows us to get funds to some of our hotel operators that exceed those employee counts. And again, it's employees, not FTEs, so everybody does matter in that classification. We would also be looking at businesses having been established by March 1st, 2020. And then businesses that operate with an eligible NAICS code, which we'll get into here on the next slide. And so Cindy. So our NAICS codes that we're targeting for this is from a broad view, it'd be sectors 71 and 72. So the arts, entertainment, and recreation sector, 71. And then the accommodation and food services sector in sector 72. We do anticipate refining this using the subcategory classifications that are available because not all sectors have been hit with the same challenges as refined within these, but these are the broad categories. And so as we define out the program, we would narrow those parameters as we get the final criteria in place to make the grant program go live. Next slide. Thanks, Cindy. Eligible expenses will continue with the same guidance. So the guidance hasn't changed from Treasury. So the eligible expenses for reimbursement as well as offset costs there remain consistent with our previous programs. Nothing else to note on that part there. Go ahead, next slide, Cindy. Our review process would consist of a lottery random selection for who would be reviewed based on the available funds. All applicants are reviewed for both eligibility and then also a financial impact assessment. Similarly, based off of what we utilized in Open Together, we were able to fully fund Open Together grant applications. We do anticipate that this fund could go in a position where we would not have enough funds to fully fund every application. So thus using the lottery selection process and then for their award determination using the financial impact assessment to see which threshold they would qualify into for how much funding. And again, funding would be up to $20,000 per eligible organization. And I'll turn it back over to Cindy for the timeline.
And on the timeline, the most important thing to note is, again, we were in a very compressed time frame for Open Together, and we're able to commit to that time frame. These individual dates, a few of these in the beginning may have to be flexible 1 or 2 days, depending on how the process is going. But again, at the very bottom, I want for you to pay attention to what we would commit to is getting payments out to recipients beginning Friday, December 4th. And we do have a lot to do in the next month to do that. We're all committed and have put this as a priority with your support and funding today that we will get these checks out into your community so we can get the support we need to this industry in a very timely fashion. We will be doing program support for this, again, webinars, direct outreach, a lot of things in here to help get the word out. We still feel very committed to making sure the application process or the window is a little more than a week. So we will be doing, that's why this time frame is the first week of December versus the week of Thanksgiving potentially. But we do feel like we need a little more time. We saw that in the Open Together program. We need to get the word out, but we have some additional marketing partners and really grateful to the support of all these organizations here today that we will also be doing direct outreach with phone calls and in-person visits to the industry, the eligible businesses. And the other key piece to this, to make this an entire program, is one of the things that we saw was a need for this industry is disposable gloves. It's really difficult for the businesses, A, if they can get them, B, they're very expensive. And we thought this would be a very unique but targeted way for the commissioners to help support the industry as well. I've been working with the purchasing department and your team have been incredible with the PPE support for small business and for our schools. And so we felt that an ask for $250,000 for a glove purchase would be helpful for this industry. They are spending anywhere from $15 to $18, $19 on a box of 100 gloves, getting them sometimes within a couple days, but a couple weeks. We can get them within a couple weeks time frame, but we can get the cost down to around $10 a box if we do a large order from the county. And we will probably support that program with an additional support to the business community with the leftover inventory that we have. We would just allow the restaurants in these industry codes to receive an entire packet, an entire box of gloves then when they come through on our PPE distribution. And then going back to the administration of this, I wanted Lance, I can either address this or Lance, you can talk about this with Felicia, not quite yet on the call.
Yeah, I can cover this. Sorry, I had an ill-timed printer kicking on. So again, the program would be administered. The primary contract holder would remain Greater Spokane Incorporated, as they already have that role established with the county. We would have partner organizations, including the Greater Spokane Valley Chamber of Commerce, Downtown Spokane Partnership, Visit Spokane, Washington Hospitality Association, as well as the Inovia Foundation here to administer the program. Much in the capacity that we had with Open Together, the biggest challenge that this program will face is the expedited timeline. So if you recall Open Together, we had about a month to develop the program, get it launched. We don't have the luxury of time this time, and so we've had to pull in additional partners to ensure that we can pull this off in the timeline presented. The benefit is all of these organizations have been involved in the grant program and bringing funds to the business community in various sectors throughout the state, as well as Spokane County. So that is the core competency that we bring forward as a coalition, bringing this program to you today. Our request is that the administrative fee be a reimbursable fund of up to $550,000. That's 5.36%. This is slightly more than what we had on the Open Together program, but the expedited timeline does require organizational shifts across the board for all of our organizations to allocate additional staffing and time and energy to get this program successfully run and completed in time to get the grant funds out to meet the timelines presented by Treasury for those being expended. So at this time, we're open to questions from the commissioners.
Lance, could I just add one quick thing? This is Mark, commissioners, and Cindy, you touched on it a minute ago, but you asked me to highlight this, and I failed to do that. One of the ways that we're going to address this timeline is by dedicating several employees to a phone bank. And so we're going to make those direct calls to as many of the businesses that fall within this category as we possibly can within an incredibly short period of time. And then where we can, we're going to build a matrix, and we're going to do follow-up, as well as in some cases, literally knocking door to door as quickly as we possibly can where that's possible. So I just want to let you know we're dedicated to that, delivering in an expedited fashion.
Thank you, Mark.
So,
Commissioners, any questions we can help answer for you? And I can take this to different slides here and show you different information too if you'd like.
So any questions, either Josh or Mary?
Yes, I do. So a couple of questions I have is, so on the kind of on the recreation area, what is that? What do you consider that? Because partly I thought we were going to be looking at trying to help get to some of the like youth sports organizations, like the Hub Sports Center. I mean, there's certainly ones that are still shut down and are continuing to be shut down. And I thought this was going to be helping with those organizations as well, but a lot of those are nonprofits, so I don't know if that fits in here.
Well, and that's something to address too, is if we have to look at some organizational structures to see how many of those are organized as a nonprofit organization and what they fit. And so that is where we still need to do a little work to see where they would fit in. These, for the for-profit businesses, there is some of that, the sports, there's a couple businesses that have indoor sports recreation. They are included in these NICS codes, but more down to that detail level. The intent was to really address those businesses that are being impacted by continued mandates that are not able to open until phase 3 and phase 4. and continued capacity restrictions in phase 2. And so that is where we're trying to address some of those in these NAICS codes.
And Commissioner Cooney, I can add a little more in there. So within the 71 classification, some examples of these type of facilities would be 71.312 is amusement arcades. Many of those are still required to be shut down. 71.3950 are bowling centers. Many of them are still at dramatically reduced capacity. And the list goes on, which is where I think our request would be for assistance if necessary on ideas of where you'd like the funds to be done, which is why we left the categories as the broad 71, 72 with the knowledge that as we refine these lists to the final eligible program parameters here for launch, there are quite a few subcategories within this, and really targeting where we want the dollars to go is key. It's easier on the accommodation and food services side to build out a program as that category is more broadly impacted, with the note that some categories even within that one have not seen quite the level. So your quick service restaurants are not in the same position as your full service restaurants. And so within the program and how it's designed, we can filter that based on some fiscal impact data that we can recover within the application process to limit which businesses end up eligible.
Commissioner Cooney, we could look at, if there's a few specific ones that we feel that the organizational structure is that of a nonprofit and isn't fitting into this for-profit model, but are facing those restrictions in phase 3 and phase 4. We can look at that and potentially add that in here like we did in the Open Together program. It was open to small business and nonprofits. We could do that here in this program if there was a way that we could create the eligibility factor that was part of the mission. We'd have to just make sure that we worded it correctly, that they fit in, their mission fits in with the purpose of a basically for-profit business, and that they are being impacted by closures potentially. The other avenue is I've been working with our nonprofit community, trying to assess some additional need out there and potentially talking about another small business nonprofit and how we support them as well. Don't know if that would fit into that bucket potentially or this bucket, but I think I could reach out to you and we could figure out before we do the full eligibility on this and work with Carrie in the Grants Administration Office on if there are businesses out there or nonprofits that fit into this model that we need to incorporate.
I just am concerned if we don't try to get them fit into this model, then we're not going to be able to do it. It's a timing, so it's like, as you know, this is a very tight time frame, and I appreciate your efforts on this. And so I don't know that we can do another one that's separate for nonprofits. I think we would have to figure out how to fit them into this, and it's really looking, like I said, I'm really looking kind of at, since seeing the recreation, and I thought some discussions were to try to figure out how to help, some of these organizations that are nonprofits, but are virtually, shut down for the most part because of, primarily in the sports area, but how do we help them, because we don't want them to go under as we try to get, back to kids, and activities and all of that aren't happening quite yet.
I think the key thing to do there is if they are required to not operate because of the government mandates in phase 3 and phase 4, that we could look at including those nonprofits and look at, like I said, their mission statement that would be similar to these NAICS codes, but I don't know how many that would be. There was a discussion about increasing this program, even incorporating more retail businesses, and it gets so large that you're not getting the funding where they need to go. So if we have a handful that fit in this from the nonprofit world, then I think that makes sense. If it's a much larger group, then it would dilute this $10 million investment to where I don't think it would make a huge impact on this industry. It'd make some, but I think we need to look at maybe who those, if it's who those youth recreation or even adult recreation programs are, and what they're doing, and what kind of costs they're incurring because of forced closures.
Right, and like I said, I'm kind of looking at like the Hub Sports Center, the warehouse, those groups that, haven't been able to really fit in other categories well, but I was thinking that those were the ones we were trying to get.
Right. Do they, and they would have a business, I mean, I think they would have a business license, hopefully. We can work with them.
Okay.
And see if it's not just, if the nonprofit is the only operator of the business, or if we can find a business license. I think it would have this NAICS code attached to it that they would qualify as a business.
Cindy, the other opportunity might be too that businesses in Washington State, I believe, are allowed to have a secondary NAICS code attached to their organization. So that might be a way to qualify them into if they have a secondary category that they could deem eligible outside of the nonprofit sector code.
Thank you.
Okay, Josh, any comments, questions?
What was there any intent to calculate in as far as eligibility or preference on if they received any funds from the previous round of grants, or is that not going to be considered into the equation?
Two really important things that I think to note here is the data formation for the business. We saw specifically in this industry, a lot of newer businesses have been formed in the last year or two in Spokane County. So we changed the date of eligibility to March 1st of 2020. In partnership with that, however, we also recognize that some existing businesses have received PPP funding, other CARES funding through Open Together or the Department of Commerce, and it's just not enough. So if you say you can't apply for this because you've received other funding, it really shuts out the opportunity to really enhance what some of the businesses need and their unique needs. So we'll be doing a financial analysis. It'll be a little different. We want to keep this application process low barrier and make sure that it is as smooth a process for everybody as possible, but we do want to have an assessment of financially what it looks like for the business and the additional assistance they've already received. So that's why when we ask you to lift the lid to $20,000 for grants, that if a business hasn't received any and there is that gap and we really feel that that's a necessary gap to fill, that they could be eligible for 20, but some other businesses may have already received enough funding to where they don't need that, and we can be flexible on how much assistance they do receive.
Okay, thank you.
So one of the questions, oh, go ahead, Mary.
One more question on, and I just want to make sure that this includes like event centers, as we've gotten a lot of requests from different event center venues and all of that. So I just want to make sure this includes that.
Caterers, yes, and some event centers we do recognize in the county. We've had some considerable impact, some of our larger caterers and event centers, yes.
So question I have for you, Cindy, on the administrative cost, where specifically did that cost increase at and where are those funds going to?
And I'm going to have Lance address some of that and see if Alicia's been able to make it on the call quite yet. But Lance, can you take that one?
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner French, for that question. Our increase of costs overall brings in the consideration of bringing additional partners into the administrative side of this. So for Open Together, we were able to run that really with 3 partners on the funding back end. This program, we're going to bring in all 5 organizations with an administrative role, whereas maybe it's marketing. This one, we do believe marketing, we're going to do more staff allotted time to do direct outreach to this sector instead of a marketing campaign. So you'll see time with both Downtown Spokane Partnership and the Washington Hospitality Front doing direct outreach to those businesses. An additional partner that was not named earlier, because we do have a partner working to do outreach to our minority-led business sector for communications on that and within these organizations as well, to make sure that that information is communicated down in an effective and understandable way. And so ensuring equity within the program there. And then lastly, it will require an additional level of involvement from each of the lead organizations within it due to the compressed timeline. So instead of being able to spread this out over 3 months with a limited number of staff, we will have to shift a little more of our primary organizational operations up to make sure that the program runs and is fully executed on the proposed timeline and then reported back on before the end of the year here, as costs must be incurred and reimbursed during the eligible time period, which only gives us through December 31st, as the commissioners are aware of, obviously.
Okay. Any other questions on this one, either Mary or Josh? Okay, what would be the pleasure of the board?
Yeah, I support the program.
Yeah, I do too. I think, I just wanted to look at some of those other, couple of areas.
Make sure that we address that, and we're in communication with Carrie, and she can get all the information to you as we assess those. Make sure we're doing, including those in this program and following up.
So do you want to put this on tomorrow's agenda and see if we can get some answers to a couple of those questions that you raised? Or are you comfortable moving forward today and allowing those questions to surface over the process? What would be your pleasure?
I'm comfortable approving today and allowing those questions to get answered, as part of the process, just so we, again, tight timeline, so I just want to get them moving on this as quickly as possible.
Hey, Josh?
Yep, I agree.
So all I need is a motion.
All right, and so total dollar amount was 10 million?
No, 10 million.
Well, actually, so yeah, because I know, so there was the 550,000 for administrative, but then there was also a slide that had 250 for gloves. Are those all included in the 10 million or?
No. It's
Okay.
actually 10,800,000.
10.8. Okay. All right. And what's the official name of this program? Just so I get it all right. This isn't Open Together. This is
Spokane County Hospitality Relief Program.
Hospitality and Relief Program. Okay. Mr. Chair, I move to approve and authorize the expenditures of up to $10,800,000 of CARES funds to fund the Spokane County Hospitality and one more time.
Relief Program.
Hospitality and Relief Program. To fund the grants, the PPEs, the administrative services, and everything else that was presented here today.
I will second that.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any more discussion on the motion? Seeing none. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Let the record reflect the motion passed unanimously. Thank you very much, everybody, for your hard
Thank you,
work in
Commissioners.
getting us to this point.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Commissioners.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioners.
All right. So, Ms. Carey, anything else that you're going to be bringing forward to us?
Cindy, did you, do we want to talk about the other issue?
I think we're good. I think this will, I think we're going to move forward with this program, and I think we'll work, you and I can work on something potentially for next week if we have any additional information regarding any other sectors or needs.
Commissioners, we've had just a number of requests come in. I probably have about 7 sitting on my desk right now that have come in. And I'm wondering if I should just send them in one email to you guys so I don't inundate you today. I didn't want to send them out last week. I got them toward the end of last week. So I was thinking of sending them out today, maybe in 2 separate emails so that you can take a look at them. Because if I send them out individually, you're going to want to hunt me down, I fear. So I'm planning on sending a number out to you today. We still have outstanding right now, just for your information, we're expecting some kind of application from EWU, WSU, the community colleges, Fire District 9. I have Fire District 4 to present to you, and I believe the airport was going to submit something as well beyond what we've been receiving. Cindy's been most helpful in reaching out. I probably have had at least 20, 25 requests in the last week. So I'm trying to work with these organizations and cull through what is appropriate and not. And I'll be presenting, like I said, I probably have 7 right now that are ready to go out to you. And I'll try to send them in one email with all attachments if you find that helpful, or if you would rather have me send those out to you separately. I'm just looking for a little direction from you today on that.
What would be the pleasure, Josh or Mary?
I think it'd be helpful just to have it in one email with just all the attachments to it.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
That's all I have today.
very good.
I just got to say, Carrie, thanks for all your efforts on this, because you certainly have been taking the majority of these. I know as I get them, I just send them off to you to say, does this work or not? So Cindy and Carrie, thank you for everything you guys are doing, because it's certainly making it much easier on us, you know, and then that way we know that you vetted it before it comes to us. So thanks.
Appreciate it. I want to make this as easy as possible so that I'm only presenting things that, you know, fall within the requirements, and helping the organizations fine tune it, I think makes it go a lot smoother.
Very good. So next item we have is a litany of miscellaneous items. I'm going to take what I think is probably the most important one first, and that is the continuation or a motion to approve resolution authorizing filing a lawsuit for nuisance property. This is an item that we were briefed on last week and asked to move forward today. And so I think you should have a copy of the resolution and the motion as well. So what would be the pleasure of the board? Mr. Kearns.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I move we authorize the Spokane County prosecutor by and through his deputies to initiate legal action to abate the drug and chronic nuisance activity at 2421 East Houghton Avenue, Spokane, Washington, 99217, assessor's parcel number 36281.0211, owned by James Look, driver, and Cassandra Shepard.
Okay.
I'll second the motion.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye, let the record reflect the motion passed unanimously. Dan, thank you. That deals with that. So is everybody good until noon? Just trying to figure out if we can wrap everything up this morning or we need to go into tomorrow for some of these items. Okay.
I'm good.
So next item is a conversation on WASAC. Found out on Thursday that evidently Commissioner Cooney has applied to be part of the leadership of WASAC, and this will have an impact on the board. When Commissioner Todd Milkey decided that he wanted to run, he talked to the board before deciding to run to make sure that we were supportive of that measure, because there will be a shift in responsibilities for committee action and things like that on the remaining board. And so, since that didn't happen before the application, thought that we'd have that conversation now. So, Ms. Cooney, if you could explain to us what your goal is and.
Yes. No, I had several people contact me to see if I would be interested in putting my name in for second vice president. I was told that, you know, at this point in time, there's not a lot of, you know, it's an additional meeting time. It's every other week that the leadership gets together and talks. I think the year that I would become president is the year that sounds like you're busier. So that would be till 2023, of which I told them I don't know that I'd be a commissioner at that point in time. So, so anyway, that's where we're at.
Okay.
Know that I need to come to the board to ask for your support.
Oh, it was just a courtesy that Todd did, because there was going to be a shift in responsibilities. I think that the number of his committees, either Shelley ended up filling in for, or I did. He was chair of SRTC at the time, and I ended up chairing more meetings than he did because he was traveling and stuff. So as you move through the ranks, the amount of work that is involved with that increases, and that just means that there's more responsibility that Josh and I are going to have to carry. So since we didn't have a chance to talk to it ahead of time, just figured we better get it out and talk about it now so that we can anticipate and plan on shifting committees and things like that so we can get everything covered. Josh, any thoughts from your standpoint?
I don't have any historical knowledge to know kind of what the increased workload is for, you know, a second vice chair or the following year when it would be vice chair and chair. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, we'll make it work. So.
Yeah, the responsibilities ramp up over time, and like I said, when Todd was the chair, he was gone 38 weeks out of 52, visiting other counties and stuff. And so while he was gone, it was the rest of us here having to carry on and stuff. So we will make it work. Okay.
Well, plus it seems like it's a benefit to the county to have somebody in leadership and knowing what's going on at the state level as well. So I saw it as a win for Spokane County.
Okay. Any other miscellaneous items? Josh, Mary?
No.
So I'd like, so we've got two executive session items that I'd like to go in and go into. So this would involve well, a senior management team for one, and for the second item, it would just be Mr. Gemmel, Mr. Kaufman, and the three commissioners for the second one. It will be an executive session for approximately 20 minutes.
This potential litigation.
Potential litigation, and yeah, both of them are potential litigation. Let's say 25 minutes. That'll take us right before 5 to noon. And then at the end of the second executive session, we will adjourn till tomorrow. All right. So it is now 11:27, and we will go into executive session until 11:55. Those present will be senior management team and three commissioners for the first item. And for, well, actually, we can probably have all of them for both items. So let's just do both items. Okay,